Hey, are you still wondering why your interiors don't look like the ones you see on your favorite feeds or inside leading magazines? Would you like to know what's missing? Well, the truth is, taking interiors to the next level is simple when you know the right steps, but most designers go about it the wrong way. Maybe you've experienced this before. You've tried to make improvements, but your spaces still don't look right. They don't look like the ones that you see on those beautiful Instagram feeds or inside your favorite glossy magazine. Or maybe you just struggle to know where to start and it's really costing you clients. That's why I've created a free training for you. Register now and come learn the 3 essential steps to take your interiors to the next level so you can finally start attracting your dream clients. Sign up now at nataliewalton.com/confidence. Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. Well, I had to share this with you. A little while ago, I did a live Q&A session with Erin Hiemstra, who is an incredible interior designer based in the San Francisco area. And we had a really honest and open discussion about pivoting from, in her case, the world of blogging to working as an interior designer, what she has learned on her journey, because I have actually interviewed Erin already once. And so this is a continuation of our conversation. And she is so honest and open about her journey. We recorded this interview or this sort of live session in Wheelie & Co., which is just south of San Francisco. And it was such a beautiful occasion, and I really wanted to give you, the listener of this podcast, the opportunity to listen to our conversation. The audio is obviously, because it's recorded in a live setting, it is not the same as what you might expect, but it's still pretty good. There is an introduction from Natalie, and that is quite a bit softer because she wasn't mic'd at the time, but it is a lovely introduction. So I thought I would include that. So just keep that in mind. And I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you get as much value out of this conversation as what I did. So please enjoy my conversation with Erin Hiemstra.
She published her first book, This Is Home, to come out like 2018.
I have no idea. I'm so bad with dates. It's around here, but so weird. Yeah, about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was, that makes sense. Okay, because it was right around the time I was thinking of getting into design. I remember ordering it online and holding my son Owen and reading through it. And I was thinking about making a big career change. And I just had this like overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, like this is so how I feel about creating home. And your words just resonated so much with me. Her book helps me realize that designing, creating a home can be really authentic and wholehearted, and it played a big part in the philosophy I have towards design now and creating faces of the shop. So being able to host you a signing here really feels full circle for me, and so I'm really excited to have you here. And Natalie has published 3 more books. We've got a few of them on the back there if you want to have one signed, or if you brought one with you. And she hosts a podcast called Imprint and also teaches courses in styling, renovating, and growing a creative business. If you're not familiar with her classes, they're great. I think I have taken all of them. I've also been such a longtime fan of Erin's blog, Apartment 34, from chronicling renovating her estate in Seattle to moving to San Francisco and restoring her beautiful Victorian home there. Erin is able to artistically blend old and new in a way that always feels really seamless. Erin works on client projects through her design for Studio Travato, where they embrace slow design, craftsmanship, and sustainability. So without further ado, we'll get started, and I'll turn it over to Natalie and Erin.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm very excited to have you here. And Erin, I have been a big fan of Erin for a long time. I have interviewed her for my podcast, but I thought this was too much of a good opportunity. I couldn't fly all the way from Australia, come to San Francisco and not meet you in person. And I always love the opportunity to speak and learn from other people. And I think conversations are so important. I think, we live in a world where it's so easy to see each other's work, connect online, and have a sense that we know a person, but nothing beats meeting in real life. Nothing beats having a real conversation. And I think that, there's so much that we can learn from each other. And so I'm really looking forward to asking Erin a little bit more about her journey and her story. So with that in mind, Natalie has very kindly sort of given a little bit of an introduction, but what I love about your story is that, like many, in some ways, you didn't necessarily start in the world of design. And I think that this is a common thread that I hear from people that, they may be in a different career, doing different things and thinking, but I love homes or I love interiors and, can I pivot or can I switch? And I thought it might be good to learn a little bit about where you were before you got into the world of interiors and how you made that transition across. Because like I said, I think this is something that resonates with a lot of people and having that courage to do it as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I have to thank you for having me here. And if you haven't taken Natalie's classes, definitely do. I think that's how I first met. Well, I first discovered you through your books, Instagram, took the styling masterclass a million years ago. I think I've taken it 3 times. It's just like a nice creative exercise. So it's just such a pleasure to finally get to meet you in person. But yeah, my journey, I definitely did the midlife career pivot. I am the card carrying example of that at the moment. And my journey in design was slow. Apartment 34 started in 2007. And those good old OG days of blogging when it was no one knew what they were doing. We just started writing things online that we were passionate about. And I was doing that because I was working in PR and, not really getting to fulfill any of my creative passions. I've always cared about aesthetics. I've always cared about homes since I was little. My mom has always said that I could find the most expensive thing in any store by the age of 5. Like it was just one of those, but I never thought of it as a career. I studied political science and government in school and, worked in those, had many different lives, basically based on the decades. But the blog was what led me to being like, oh, I can talk about creative things even having not studied it, not gone to school for it. I have a perspective, I have a point of view, I have an aesthetic that's resonating with people. So I do think the blogging obviously gave me a platform to feel more comfortable, and social media and putting, just kind of getting to put myself out there and get that feedback. So that was really my school. And I did that for 15 years, really. Apartment 34 was my full-time job for a good chunk there in the 2010s. And then when the pandemic hit, I had been doing little projects for friends. Obviously, I'd done my own houses. And then obviously the world stopped and everyone got to reassess what they were doing. And coming out of that, a good friend of mine here actually in the Bay, one of the first, I think the first lunch that I had coming out of lockdown, I've been thinking about, I've been doing, people DM'd me, I've done this little project, I've done that. Well, maybe, should we try? And I will say having a partner, I think is what pushed me to feel brave enough to actually officially start a studio and not just do it with a friend. Not to say that you couldn't do it on your own, but it did feel really reassuring and also just fun to collaborate with someone again. I think both after being in isolation and after having done my own blog by myself for so long, to do something collaborative been really great. So Studio Trovato was born. It'll be 2 years in January. And yeah, it's the two of us as partners, and we're doing boutique commercial, hospitality, and residential design. It's going really fantastic. And I've literally never been happier in all of the different, ways that I've been able to touch the creative world. This one definitely feels the most satisfying because you're creating beautiful spaces for somebody else. which is just so fulfilling to give people homes, especially, in this day and age where we are now, that feel like they take care of them, that bring them joy, bring them peace, bring them comfort and safety, and are beautiful. It's just beyond fulfilling. It's really fun.
Yeah. So many questions. One of them, I think that you say that the blog helped you get a better understanding of your own aesthetic. And I think that this is really key for being able to grow a business, is that people, gravitate towards you because, they like your style and they sort of want to get, your eye on their project. How did you develop your aesthetic? How did the blog help you do that? And how has your aesthetic, I guess, evolved over the years?
Oh, that's a complicated question. I think it is really hard to kind of hone that. And there was a lot of trial and error, and it's definitely evolved, I think, really as I've aged and matured, which I think is true for everyone. Your style just continues to match kind of where you are in life. But I really did I was intentional, and we are intentional at Studio Trovato about creating a really specific point of view that obviously when you're doing interior design and client work, you have to layer in, your client's perspective and their style and their aesthetic. And we were really trying to be a studio because, there's kind of two schools, I feel like, where you see in design. There are folks who kind of have signatures and their projects when you see them, which is fantastic and I think is a wonderful way to brand. We're trying to do kind of a hybrid of that, where no project would feel the same because we really are integrating a client's perspective, but we have clear touch points that are definitely our point of view, a slightly more pared back aesthetic, not true minimalism, but an elevated sense of sophistication. Modern vintage pieces that juxtapose ages and eras in really unique and creative ways. Really specific use of color in subtle moments, but it's not, print on pattern on tone and those types of things. So we're hoping, especially we're going to have projects that we're finally going to get to publish in the next 6 months, because it does take a long time, that we're hoping you see a through line through our projects, but that each one is unique to the home's architecture, to the people who live there, to where it is. Those, I think, are really how we've honed in over the years.
And so apartment 34, forgive me if I'm incorrect with this, so that was your home?
Yes.
And so I always think that, our own homes are a great laboratory to experiment with our style, learn about what works and what doesn't. How did your home become your laboratory in terms of developing your style?
Yeah, they'd evolved over time. Apartment 34 was a condo that I bought in Seattle when I was single and 25, and they had subprime mortgages, so 25-year-olds could get a house. Lucked out on that one. Not so, and luckily we got out of it before it got ugly. But that was my first playground, and it had watermelon pink striped wallpaper on the walls. It was apparently I only like old architecture because it was in a 1904 historic building in Seattle, which is actually pretty rare for there to be very old apartments or homes there. So it was one of the older ones, and I didn't get to do that much to it. I repainted. I took out the tin print wallpaper in the kitchen, but then I met my now husband, and within a couple of years moved in with him. So then tried to lipstick on a pig his house, which was horrible. That was a really fun experiment because that was a suburban split level, very classic Pacific Northwest, popcorn on the ceilings, full floor to floor carpeting that was pretty much furnished with things from Home Depot. So I had a lot of experimenting to get to do when I was just the girlfriend and then the fiance. So, I had to kind of slow play that one. But luckily my husband also had experience not flipping houses, but he's very hands-on and had done renovations in things before. So he was actually been a great partner for me because I find it's well, let's just redo a bathroom. Let's try that. And so we did a lot of it ourselves. He tiled, but I designed it and he laid all the tiles. So that was a fun experimenting. I blogged a little bit about that. Don't go try to look that stuff up because I think it is still online, but it's pretty embarrassing because that was in 2010. But that was my first playground. And then we moved to San Francisco. And we rented, we were renting places around the city. And so those were, again, where I was not getting to do renovations, not getting to do full scale type of interior design, but getting to play with paint colors, getting to play with ways that you could upcycle a rental, removable wallpaper on a wall. Can we convince the landlord to paint? Can we, redo these floorings? What can we do with furnishings? And that's when I got my first apartment was published. Like, that's where I was like, okay, maybe I really do have, a perspective here that's resonating with people. And then finally we bought the Victorian in 2014. And that really became the laboratory, because that house is 160 years old. We're only the 5th owners. It was in insane shape when we bought it. And luckily we saw the potential. And so that's where I really, really got to, I think, really hone what I would say is and that aesthetic has held. That's what I feel most proud of, actually, because it's almost 10 years now since I designed that renovation. And there are very few things that I would change now. And I feel good about that. Because it's really easy to get caught up in trends and to, be like, oh, I know you designed that bathroom in 2022. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to hold ourselves to at Studio Travato is you're going to invest in pieces that you're going to love for a decade, for 20 years, for, 50 years. We don't want our places to feel dated or aged or very tied to a specific time period. So being really thoughtful about that.
And so what would you say are those sort of threads throughout your style, your homes, or the things that are really consistent in that home that you still love? I mean, you've mentioned sort of like the small pared back aesthetic, but what are some of those other qualities that you sort of think, express your aesthetic or style that, really resonate with you, that you're drawn to?
The juxtaposition of styles. So I love putting, modern light fixtures and some modern furnishings in historic architecture. So really trying to create tension, using natural materials wherever we can, just classic, beautiful stone, classic, beautiful wood. And then again, really clean lines, nothing overly ornate or overly complicated, but also things that age and patina really well. So unlacquered brass, glass, stone, that home should feel lived in. They shouldn't feel pristine forever. I mean, I love neutrals. My entire house is basically decorated with white. I have a 9-year-old son. Like, this is why magic erasers were invented. Like, it's fine. You just go wipe it off. Like, people are very scared of, things getting messed up. And I'm like, no, that's part of the fun. I mean, I see all the scuffs in our floors now, 10 years in, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's when my son dropped a giant, bowl, or, we pulled the bike through the house. I mean, they're stories. And I really love that piece of it. And then thinking about just, again, that juxtaposition, a really plush, big fluffy sofa, but then a really, modern, maybe steel low coffee table, like just always trying to put opposing elements next to each other, I think is what really can bring interest into spaces.
Yeah, I love that. That's, I think it, like you say, it creates that visual tension. It's sort of engaging for the eye and can really help transform a space and prevent it from looking too monotone in a way. Back when everything's, matching, or everything is from a certain era, there's sort of, it's not as playful for the eye, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious then, like staying on the kind of idea of aesthetics, how like your business partner, and I want to go into that sort of dynamic as well, but just on an aesthetic point of view, how would you describe her aesthetic? Like, are you very similar in terms of the types of aesthetic that you have, or is there some contrasting elements? How do you marry that together as a partnership? And then obviously you're then bringing in your client's perspective as well. So you've got that three-way relationship.
Yeah, it's a nice dance, and I actually really enjoy it because I like bouncing creative ideas off each other. I would say Jeannie, she's incredibly talented. She's been in creative businesses for years. She ran actually a paper company called Harlow and Gray, if you ever saw it. These really cool party supply company that she ran for about 8 years that, pandemic kind of killed parties. So that was a little tough. But so she's worked in creative industries and actually worked together. Could we collaborate? Would we not want to kill each other? The whole thing. And it went well. And so then we sat down and we're very intentional. I mean, we have a whole business contract. So we have very clear rules. Like I said, I'm the creative director. She's our director of operations. So we have split those duties very specifically. So I really am driving on the design side. We've just brought on actually a project designer to work with me because once it got to the point where we had so many projects, I couldn't keep them straight in my head anymore. I was like, nope, I need help. And so we've got a designer, and then we have a couple of freelance. We have an assistant, we have a procurement specialist, but she's running our day-to-day operations. She's our primary, when those client questions come in, Jeannie's answering the emails. She's better at like keeping the trains going. I'm better at the 40,000 foot, like big vision stuff. For someone who is like the queen of social media and is so good at it, I want to be like, how do you do that? Because I suck at it. I post on Instagram, I think once a month now. And we haven't posted on the Studio Travato account in like 6 months because I own it. And truthfully, I can hardly stand to be on the platform anymore. And we're just too busy. Like I need to get like a virtual assistant or, someone in their 20s to do it. Also, I can't do reels and I'll never touch TikTok ever, even though I know we should. And she'll get mad at me and say, no, you really should. But I'm so excited because once we could actually market, and we do have grand visions. I mean, we would like to be a big, substantial studio and take on bigger projects. And right now we have everything that runs the gamut through just furnishings projects to whole scale, renovations. We're not doing any new builds yet. That I'm still trying to decide if I want to do a new build.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel really, really lucky that we're going. And hopefully that will keep going in 2025.
Okay, so let's talk about clients because, I mean, you mentioned you had that first project was a test project, which I think is actually a really great idea if anyone is considering going into partnership with someone or collaborating in some capacity to sort of have a test project. I think that's really smart. But getting those first few clients can often be the hardest thing. We've sort of been speaking I was sort of doing a workshop with some amazing creative businesswomen yesterday, and we were talking about this idea of going from 0 to 1 is often the hardest point. Going from like stop to actually starting, getting that momentum is often the hardest part. Once you've got a little bit of momentum, to keep going is so much easier. But, to just go from 0 to 1 is like, that's the biggest push.
For sure.
And so how did you get those first clients and then just to kind of start getting that momentum going? Because I think once you've got the momentum, it starts to become easier and easier. But that first push of getting clients.
Yeah. And that I will say, we had a little bit of an unfair advantage in that. That's what the blog brought me. Our first clients, once I announced that I had shifted, and I apologize to any Apartment 34 reader out there because I fully ghosted the blog because of the pandemic. Like, my son was 4 when lockdown happened. I had, private family stuff happen and illness, and I literally just had to stop and always thought I would go back and at least write the post of like, I'm not going to be a blogger anymore. That post never got written. So I literally just kind of disappeared, and Instagram was the only thing that I kept doing consistently. And so when I announced that I was, going to partnership, starting Studio Travato and doing this, my first clients were followers. And then also in combination, I also feel like I have a little bit of an advantage. My business partner is also a native San Franciscan and has lived here her entire life, went to college here, and has a massive family and a massive network. And so we've also gotten a lot of clients through, or at least gotten inquiries through her friends or friends of friends. And so all I can say is just work your networks, whatever your network is. We're advantageous in that we had an online-based network, but networking is the way to go. And then the fact that we had done projects of our own, so that I had my Victorian in Domino magazine that came out in winter of 2019, 2020. So we had some calling cards already. I did a property during COVID actually, and was able to get that project published. So we had stuff out there that let us talk about ourselves. Similarly, my business partner also did her home during the pandemic. So we were able to put that out and just immediately have projects, even though they were for ourselves. At least it gave us a way, to your point, of showing what our aesthetic is, how the studio was really going to present itself collectively. But I would say, yeah, and now we do very intentionally network constantly. We're going to as many events as we can. We're networking with other designers. We're just trying to be in community with other people and just let folks know what we're trying to do, because you never know. I mean, we were talking with one potential restaurant project because my business partner kept going to the chef's pop-up dinners. And they became friends, and he was like, oh, wait, you have a design studio? Well, actually, I'm trying to get a physical space. Like, would you be interested? And like that just snowballed. So not being shy about we just did a pop-up gallery actually in the city. Artist friends of ours do an annual pop-up gallery. And for the first time this year, they invited other female artists. So it was 7 artists in a space in Noe Valley. And 3 weeks before, they came to us and they were like, we actually want an interior design partner to help us really realize the space, because it was big, not quite as big as Wearily Clothes, but a big space in Noe. And I mean, we're busy, it's the fall, it's back to school, but we looked at each other and we were like, oh yeah, no, we need to do this. And have we gotten a client out of it yet? No, but we had postcards made. Every single postcard that we had sitting in that space was taken during that time. So who knows what kind of long lead. And it was just an awareness moment, right? There was buzz around the interwoven pop-up gallery, and Studio Devato was involved, and we photographed it. And so now we're going to have these beautiful shots, and now we have these great working relationships with these artists, and who knows what that's, and we're in a very big place of saying yes, basically, is my point. Like, we're just saying yes. And I think that's bringing exciting projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, that's so true of so many stories I hear through interior designers or, any kind of service-based business is really, making the most of whatever you've got, whether that's Instagram, whether that's a blog, whether that's your friends and family. And many people often do have, friends and family, or, people that are friends of friends and so on as their first clients. But how have you got to the point where, because sometimes people do work for free or it's like a really reduced rate. How do you then start to transition to, we need to be paid what our time is worth? And how has that evolved within your business? Because obviously when you start to bring on staff, you start to bring on contractors or other people, I mean, you need to pay them, a proper wage. Oh, yeah. And so your projects need to be financially viable, which means that you need to be charging your worth as well. Yeah. So how has that transitioned?
A long time ago, I wish I'm going to remember who told me this, but this was in the blogging days. And when you do paid sponsored content, and how do you figure out what you're worth? And I think particularly women were a little more hesitant around putting big numbers out there. And someone said to me, if your stomach doesn't hurt when you are putting a bid out or asking to be paid, then you're not asking for enough. And I really employed that after that fact. And it's true, because 90% of the time they'll say yes. And if they say no, then you can just either, if you really want the job, you can negotiate the price back down, or that's not the job for you. That's the other, it's the combination of, it needs to be a hell yes to say yes to something. And then you need to feel fairly compensated for it. Otherwise, it's going to feel like a burden, and it's going to suck your energy and bring your creative spirit down rather than lift it up. And so and it's still a constant learning experience. We also do have a accountant. That was their first hire. An accountant from day one who is very well versed in interior design, because it's an incredibly complicated business in terms of how you have to run it, from sales tax and all, tax exemption and all of these different pieces. And so luckily we got referred to a great accountant. And within the first year, she said, you need to raise your rate. And so that was the other push. And then just constantly reassessing the market and knowing where we are and what's happening in the world. And as we gained confidence and as our projects have gotten more complicated and we realized, oh no, we really do have the expertise and the skills that we can provide. We fully recognize we're providing a luxury service. Interior design is a luxury to be able to even afford to do. as a client. And we're also being really intentional on delivering that luxury service. Every touch point is beautifully designed. Every interaction is trying to help the client feel like, oh, I'm really, getting an amazing offering here, because a client can go anywhere. They can hire anybody. They can spend their money anywhere. They chose you for a reason. And so you really need to deliver on that. And that's our other justification as our rates have gone up, that, we feel very confident that we are delivering the value that someone's paying us. And I feel like if you can stand behind that, then charge what you are worth.
And how do you charge? Do you charge hourly? Do you put a proposal together? I think
How do you charge an interior design? They want to hear no, because I'll take your advice.
listen, everyone
does it differently, right? There is no industry standard.
Yes.
I've listened to every podcast under the sun. I subscribe to Business at Home. All the things to try to figure it out. I don't think there is a perfect solution. So here's what we're doing now. I'll let you know in a year if we are still doing it, if we like it. We did start out doing flat rate. I feel like everyone starts out doing flat rate because it feels less scary. And it's an easier number to sell into a client. And it's true. It is much easier to get a client to say yes to a flat number, and you get screwed. You do not make money doing that at all. And we learned that real hard and real fast. Then
aren't those lessons good though?
Oh, they are good. They are good. And thankfully they weren't early.
Early.
And thankfully they weren't on one of them was on one of our bigger projects, but that's okay. They're getting a really good deal. So then we shifted to hourly. So we are doing mostly hourly. Hourly is hard because you have to track your hours, which takes a lot of time. And so you have to factor that in. So we actually now are experimenting with a hybrid, where we charge a flat fee for our concept phase, for your first phase of engagement. And then for when we shift into design development, procurement, and construction management, we shift to hourly. We're liking that right now. And we feel like that is kind of a valid way to bill, because the concept phase we really own and control. And so we know the parameters of how much time that's going to take. We know what the scope, if the scope is this big, it's going to take this much time. If the scope's this big, it's going to take this much time. We just literally base that on our hourly rate, and we give a flat fee to the client. We take a retainer to start any project, always take money up front. We take a retainer, and then the rest, percentage is due halfway through, and then the rest is due at the end of the concept phase. And then in design development and construction management, scopes change, things shift, and we feel like we do hourly estimates, so the client's not going in blind. So we say, okay, we think this phase is going to be this many hours, you're going to get charged this month as a monthly retainer, but if it's going to go more than that, we're going to give you a heads up. If by some miracle it was less than that, we would roll your retainer forward. And thus far, that has really worked for us. I have talked to other designers who are starting to shift to the percentage model, which is the construction really based model of here's your overall budget, we're going to charge you 20%. I think that is particularly effective when you're doing new builds, and when you're doing really big construction projects. Like I said at the beginning, we're not doing that yet. So we haven't shifted to that model. But again, some of our projects have been 2 years long. So we're still getting data about, okay, how are our rates actually penciling out? And I feel like as we finish projects, we are being really intentional about tracking everything and going back and assessing, like, okay, did we actually, we can see the money coming through the door, but did we actually make a profit? What are we able to cover? We're also running really lean. We don't have a space. We're working remotely. All of our folks right now are contractors. We're not taking on employees yet. We've been really slow because, to your point, once you're responsible for people, we want to make sure that we have a really solid foundation so people have solid careers with us. We want to build a studio with longevity, and I don't want to have to hire and fire quickly just because we don't have enough work. That doesn't feel good to me. So we're trying to be really, really intentional. Now, after doing the pop-up gallery, yes, I desperately want to get a space, and we have all these big dreams, and I talked to a realtor and I was like, no, okay, hold up, getting ahead of ourselves. So we're going to wait, we're probably going to wait another year. We're going to wait and see what happens in the world and then take those next steps.
Yeah. And so just a few little really practical kind of questions. Are you using like something like Harvest for time tracking? And what programs do you use to manage your projects within your business? And then also want to just check in, because like you say, you didn't go to design school. So for those design drawings, did you upskill on that? Are you doing that, or who's doing that? You know, because obviously you need to have that level of, visual communication with your client.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. The great thing I've learned as I finally, hit middle age, is you can delegate things that you can't do or that you don't want to do, that you're not good at. And it took me a really long time to learn that, because I always was the type of person who's like, I have to do everything. I'm a control freak, and I can't let anyone know that I don't know how to do something, because that shows up me. Which tends to be a woman thing too. So yes, we have a drafter. Trained architect, who is our freelance drafter. She does all of our technical drawings. She's fantastic. I have taken little sidebar. I've been taking hand sketch. I really like hand sketching, even though I know now AI and renders are all the thing, but I think hand sketching is just beautiful. So I've literally been like taking sketching classes and watching YouTube videos, just so because we're doing a lot of custom work and we're doing a lot of custom furniture, and I have a lot of ideas in my head and I don't know how to draw them in a way that someone can make them. So I've been teaching myself and taking classes to do that. And then, so then we do have our drafter, and what was the second part?
So we were asking, about time tracking and also
time tracking
and programs for like the management side.
So we do use Harvest. Harvest is great. If you haven't used Harvest, it's fantastic. We do most of our project tracking in Google Suite, because it's inexpensive to use Google Office. We've played with there are a lot of different design project management programs out there. Studio Designer, House Pro,
Desado.
Desado, Programma. We're actually researching them right now. We tried House Pro, and sorry, the House Pro, but we didn't really like you. Very clunky, didn't work great. People really like Studio Designer, but it's expensive, and we've heard there's a very large learning curve. So we've just been using more basic programs, and we use Basecamp as a project management tool. I don't know if you're familiar with Basecamp. It's a pretty inexpensive, it was actually started by developers for building websites. So it's not very pretty, it's not very designery, but it's highly functional. It's very dude focused. I just feel like it's like you drop a lot of stuff in there. But for a team who's like, our people are remote. I mean, we've got someone who's working in Pacific Northwest. We have someone who's working in Italy. We have someone who's working, in the Southeast. So it works to just have those collaborative tools where we're trying to keep things out of email. My goal in life is do not DM me, do not text me, and do not email me, because that's just makes you reactive all the time. So we're trying to use as much collaborative software as possible to keep things efficient, because we are really lean and we are running a lot of projects right now. And it's like, I don't have time to do a lot of back and forth. So here at Collabodoc, we use Canva. I also love Canva for our presentations. Canva's a great tool, and it's collaborative. We can, we just give our team access and we say, you need information, go to that presentation. It's in this, it's in this deck or that deck. So those are the tools. But I think as we grow, we are going to need to invest in a more design-specific software for efficiency's sake. But we're, again, just waiting to make that investment until we feel really confident that it's going to help us.
Yeah, and that's a smart way to do it, because, you sort of, it can be very easy to feel like I need to have this thing, and that can sometimes make us feel validated, in our business. Like I've got all the bells and whistles, but like you say, you need to grow with your business and get, the basic systems in place in terms of, how do we work and what is our process, and then kind of implement it through that way. So I do think that's kind of, and we still use Google Suite for so many different things.
Yeah.
So with Basecamp, are you having your contractors in there as collaborators within there, and you're they come into that space?
Yeah, they come into that space, and it really is it's basically a task tracker. I mean, it's not much fancier than an electronic to-do list, but you're able to group things by project. You can and the thing about Basecamp is you can build it however you want.
there's no set way, unlike, you know, a lot of the interior design programs. It's like you have to use their buckets the way their design Basecamp is a free for all. So you can set it up however you like. So like we've set it up by project. We have to-do lists. You get assigned tasks. Anyone can assign anyone else a task. You can communicate in there. There's a chat function. So it, you know, I never used Slack because I got out of corporate work by 2016. So that was pre-Slack, so I never had to deal with that, but I think it's kind of a version of Slack, so we can chat in there and not have to be pinging each other and email back and forth. So do I love it? No. It's not visually appealing to me. It's a lot of lists and a lot of checkboxes, and so I can get a little overwhelmed, but it does hold all the information. It is searchable. Like if you need to go find like, oh, has someone bought that pillow that we're still supposed to be sourcing for this project and we knew it got added to a list somewhere, I can search the specific pillow and it'll pop up, and whether there's a, you know, so it's very utilitarian, but it works.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep using it for now.
Yeah. And what about then talking of communication and not like in DMs or trying to get out of email? What about with clients? How do you communicate with clients? What are the boundaries that you have? You know, it can be very easy to suddenly be at the beck and call of like text messages with clients or, you know,
For sure.
email threads and all of those things. So how do you manage that side of things?
So we do most of our all of our presentations in person for the most part. I do really find that the in-person communication is the most effective, especially when you're trying to help someone understand why they're going to spend a lot of money on something. So we do all of our presentations in person, but we do use email outside of like contracts and official documents. Email as our primary source of tracking everything because you want a written record of decisions. So after every meeting, you know, very disciplined around like there's a follow-up email that goes out that's like, oh, here's everything that we discussed. Here are the key takeaways. Here are the decisions that are going to be made, and here's how we're going to move forward. We do a weekly. Clients know they're going to get a weekly progress email every week. That's just like, oh, we haven't met for a few weeks, but here's what we're working on, and here's what's happening, and here's what you can expect. So just that regular cadence of communication. Sure, I do text with clients, even if I don't want to. It's the way of the world, so we text, which is totally fine. I try not to let them DM me, though. I'm like, if you see something on Instagram, just take a screenshot, email it to me later. Don't send it to me over my DMs. It's gonna get lost. But it happens. You know, I'm not overly strict about that, but we do try to really, because we're liable. I mean, we're, you know, doing big renovation projects. Like we need to make sure that all key decisions and information are captured so that they're official.
Yep. And what about, got a complete mental blank for a second. There's like about 10 questions swirling around in my head. So one of the questions I was going to ask you about was, obviously you said you've worked on quite a few commercial projects. How do you kind of think you got down that path? Is that the path that you really enjoy? What are the pros of doing commercial projects versus more residential? What does that look like as a process?
Yeah, that's a great, that's like a therapy question because we're trying to decide that right now. I was so excited to get some commercial work because I have a background in branding and marketing and PR and politics and all these different things. And so I felt like that really pulled those other parts of my brain out because I love branding and marketing. There's no money there. The budgets are tiny. Budgets are tiny for commercial projects. I mean, generally, especially if when you're working with small, like a chef, like people who don't have big funders or don't have big backers. Or on the opposite side, we have done some hospitality work where you think, oh, they're gonna have huge budgets. No, they also are. I mean, everyone's working on really small margins, right? When you're working in any type of commercial space. So it's just a whole different ball game in terms of the types of materials you can use, and you're just trying to value engineer everything and still get the aesthetic and get the functionality out. So that's been a great education of learning about new materials and whole other worlds of vendors that work specifically in commercial and hospitality spaces, because you just have to have different functionality and different ability to withstand usage, right, in those settings. So that's been really fun. But it's interesting. I thought, oh, this is going to be like a huge piece of our work. And then if you're in the Bay Area, you're probably familiar with Nicole Hollis. She's an amazing interior designer based in San Francisco. She's gotten a lot of attention for a lot of her big hotel work, and she just did a podcast recently where she's like, we're getting completely out of hospitality. We're only doing residential. And I was like, noted. Okay, maybe we're gonna back that train up. So I don't know. I feel like now it needs to be the right project and someone who's doing something that we believe in. I think that's how we're gonna do it. It's almost like that's gonna be one of our ways that we offer community and I don't want to say charity to people because obviously they would still be paying us, but realizing those are more passion projects where we get to put our voice out there, where we're helping other creative people put their voice out there. That brings me a lot of joy. And I would say, okay, so that's where we're going to realize we're not going to make money on those, but we're going to feel good about ourselves and we're going to help other people in our community be successful in their businesses. And if we can be a part of that, then we'll do it. And we'll pay the bills by doing residential. Yeah. I think that's, who knows, that could change in a nanosecond because the world could change in a nanosecond, but I think that's where we're gonna go right now.
And so what about your onboarding process? So when you get somebody who makes an inquiry, like you say, you've had people come to you through Instagram, through your worlds, and how do you filter, like, are these the people that are the right fit? Do you do initial consultation? Do you do that for free? Do you do like a discovery call? There are lots of different methods that, people talk about in terms of, I guess qualifying clients, but also, like encouraging people to have that connection with you and to be considered as a potential client.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great question too. It's hard to figure that piece out because we've been lucky where we've had really good working relationships with all of I have no nightmare stories. Not entirely. Our early one, but when we were testing things out, was a little nightmarish. But other than that, everyone's been fantastic. But that was a learning experience. So we do a intake questionnaire, preliminary questionnaire. That's just pretty bare bones. Who are you? Where do you live? What's your style? What's your budget? What's your goals? Just to see like, okay, is this within the universe of something that we want to work with? Then we do a discovery call. That is free. We do, 30 minutes just to chat with someone and to start to get a sense. Then if we think, okay, yes, we want to take this person on, then we do a really big in-depth questionnaire and a scope definition. And that we require a retainer for to start that conversation. But then it's also still about getting to know someone. So we've created a deck with a huge just litany of images that we feel like kind of represent our aesthetic and our world. And we send it to them and just ask them to react. It's just a Canva presentation, a bunch of slides, and they can just comment whatever they want willy-nilly. And we found that as a really great tool just to see, okay, what resonates with this person? Because I will say no to a client that is completely outside of my aesthetic wheelhouse because I know that there are other people who could do it better than me and they would get a better experience and another designer would probably enjoy it more than I would. Like, I'm not gonna do a traditional home. Like that's just not gonna happen. It's not where my brain is, it's not where my skill set is. And I could produce it, I think, but I think it would be hard. I think it wouldn't be that fun. And I think no one would enjoy the process on our side or the client side. So I would rather send that. I've got, 80% of my friends are designers. So I would much rather refer that work to somebody else, knowing that they might return the favor someday, than to take a project that's a wrong fit.
Yeah. So we've got like investment guides, welcome guides, proposals, all of these things. Like what, out of all of those different kind of assets, what are the ones that you have and use in your business?
Yep, we have them all. We did decide to go down that route. We did not invent them. I bought some templates, people. Like hunt online, find someone who makes pretty templates that you like and spend the money on those and then make them your own. That's what we did. It saved us so much time. So we have in the client kind of attraction phase, we have a how we work guide, which is just, nice little pretty, like here's little snippets of our process. We have an investment guide to help people right size, which I do think is a huge piece right now, especially living here. I don't know what it's like in Australia right now, but construction costs in the Bay Area are insane. And even someone in the design industry, I still am like, what? And this is a huge education piece that we need to do with clients because they just don't understand. Like, wait, 150K doesn't means I can't redo my whole house? No, it doesn't, like at all. So we really have started trying to educate them, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So having to right-size people's expectations, and we don't have like a minimum. Some designers are like, I don't pick up the phone unless you've got a $2 million budget. We're not doing that. We are talking with people about working in phases. Like, let's do a phase 1. Here, okay, this is your budget right now. Let's do that. Like, your home is meant to evolve with you over time in your life. It doesn't have to be done perfectly all right now. Let's just do the kitchen and the bathrooms, or let's just add that space you need because you just had a new baby, or let's just tackle what your resources are able to tackle in the best way possible, and then we'll help you in the next round. So we've been doing it that way, and I feel like that's been helpful to people, and I do think that's one of the reasons why we've grown quickly and gotten more clients. Some of the projects are smaller, but we know that if we deliver that, we're just furnishing the ground floor of someone's home because they just moved in and they don't have any furniture and they just need to be able to entertain their family for the holidays, but then they're going to come back to us next year and we'll do the rest of it. And we're okay with that. I feel like that, I think that's just been really smart. And we want to create long-term relationships with people. I think it's more satisfying to be in really good working relationships with folks.
So break down like a typical week, because I think that sometimes the term of like, I'm an interior designer, like it's sort of like, it's this vague in some ways term of like, well, what actually do you do? Like, what does that look like in its sort of typical week? How would you say that your week is broken down?
And we have set up structures because I'm the type, I'm sure if you're a creative person, like I can get sucked into Pinterest for 3 hours and then look up and then like, oh, shit. I should check my email. So Jeannie's been good. I will give her so much credit. She's very good at helping me with that. But so like Mondays is our, like obviously kick off so that's when we have our team meeting. We have a stand-up team meeting every Monday. We reflect on everything that we've accomplished the week before. We identify any key deliverables that we have coming up that week. We talk through how we're gonna get those done, who owns what, and we pass that out. And so that's really like, okay, this is our get everything going day. If there's anything really quick, also our client weekly updates, we draft those on Mondays. We send them on Tuesdays because we feel like clients also need a day to get their lives organized. So we try to keep our client communications between Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We try not to do client communications on Mondays or Fridays. Like there is, and if you send out an email, don't ever send out an email after noon on a Friday. Like why? That's gonna get lost. And then you're just gonna get DMs and texts from your clients all weekend long. So, because that's when they're gonna have time to look at it because they also have full-time jobs and they're thinking about their design work. So that's why we do it on Tuesdays because then they have the week to think about things and maybe they'll get back to us on the Friday because that's the day that they left to get their bottom of the list stuff. So then we get our to-dos. We found that's been a really good rhythm. We block out every other Friday, me and I do for internal things, business development, marketing, talking about, our staffing, just any of those. So we try to have that really consistently. And then we try to block out a day a week where we can be out of the office if we need to do site visits, if we need to be pulling samples, if we're going to the stone yard, we try to do that, what do they call it, time blocking. And trying to be really smart about time blocking to be again, efficiency is really important to me. You can't grow if you're not efficient. So really trying to be efficient with how we block that time and dividing and conquering. That's been a little bit harder for Jeannie and I to do. That is the one thing with having a partner. In the first year, we felt like we really needed to do everything together all the time. And we're recognizing now that it's not efficient. It also, we can't really double bill a client for both of our time in every instance. So we realized you can take this presentation and do it alone. I can take this piece and do that piece alone. And so we've started dividing and conquering that way too. And I think that's, again, just helped us be able to do more in shorter amounts of time.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And I'll open up to some questions in a moment if there are some things that you would like to ask. But I guess sort of when you reflect on, your journey, where you've sort of started from and where you're going,
What would you say would be some of like the big lessons that you have learned on your journey, sort of going into the world of interior design?
Well, that's a great one.
And if you sort of think like, I wish I knew this at the start. If I could tell my younger self this is what I would tell her.
I wish I knew earlier that you can do it. Like, you know, we just saw a very national example of women think they need to be real qualified to get a job, and you don't need to have all of the typical qualifications to be able to step in and get a job. So, but if you have passion and you know what you don't know, you don't try to fake anything, and you go and buttress yourself, whether that's hiring people out or taking classes, you can do it. So I wish I'd made the career pivot earlier. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. I'm having so much fun. I'm so creatively fulfilled. I don't miss creating content in any way, shape, or form. Bless you to people who make amazing content. I am not that person anymore, and I feel so good about it. So I wish I'd known that earlier, that I could have done it earlier. Like I didn't need to sit there and have imposter syndrome for so long. And I really say I don't have imposter syndrome now. Like, no, I don't have a degree in interior design, and that's okay. There are huge interior designers that have TV shows and tons of books and all kinds of things that never took a class. So don't let that stop you, but also recognize that you need to constantly be educating yourself. So like, yes, I will never get on TikTok. I'm too old for that. But am I trying to learn AI right now? Yes. Like, am I trying to figure out how to use these different tools and how we can, you know, grow our business in those ways? Yes, never stop learning that piece. And I think in interior design, you never stop learning. But every project is different. Every project's gonna have some catastrophe. Every project's gonna have some new problem that you've never come across, but you know, you're creating something new every time. So that's also been really fun for me to feel like, oh, I'm finally learning new things again, because I didn't feel like I was learning a lot of new things in blogging or in PR and marketing. But in design, you're constantly evolving. You're constantly getting inspired. Yeah, it's just a total joy. So don't be afraid, go do it.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really, really powerful sort of lesson to share. Any questions? I mean, I've got a couple more, but please ask if you've got questions. Don't be shy. This is your opportunity.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I feel very passionate about collaboration. And I think, again, I know I keep referencing like this day and age, but I've been thinking about like, okay, what can we do to feel better and help the world right now? And what I've really zeroed in on is I want to help other people be successful, because if we're all sick, that's just going to raise all boats. Yeah. So how can we constantly be in community and raising one another up, especially as women business owners? Like that is what is going to keep us elevated and buoyed in this time. So yes, open book, always DM me. You can find me on Instagram. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Yeah. So. Do we have a question? Yes.
Thank you so much for the great advice. Is so amazing. One wish I had was on construction partners, and I need GCs to work with. Yeah. That's been a challenge I've experienced.
For sure.
Right fit. How have you approached that? Have you this like kind of piecemeal develop relationships with GCs? Do your clients hire the GCs?
Yeah, we're still figuring that one out too, I have to admit. We've been in a unique, I don't know if it's a unique situation, but it's been our situation where every client that's come to us has already had an architect. And in most cases, if they didn't already have their GC, they had already like gotten referrals and were interviewing people. We have projects all primarily in the Bay Area, but all over right now. We've had projects in Napa, Lafayette, East Bay, City. I've learned contractors really only like to work in like a 20-mile radius. So that's a fun piece. I would love to have the scenario where like we have our dudes in our pocket and like this is just who we work with all the time. That hasn't happened yet. We do have we have an amazing contractor who's working on our big historic home in the Berkeley Hills right now, but he's one of the dudes who doesn't work outside of a 15-mile radius. And I'm like, David, come on. Like he's so knowledgeable. He's so good. He's meticulous. He's not the cheapest, but if you have a client who really cares about quality, like David's going to deliver. But he's created a brilliant business model where he's literally like only works in like 3 neighborhoods and all the neighbors just keep referring each other to him, and he lives in that neighborhood. So like he literally doesn't, and I was like, okay, fine, dude, like you're smart. You got it dialed. So yeah, it's been a little bit of trial and error. Also just asking, I mean, I'm on a couple of different text
group texts with other designers who I've been, known in the city for more than a decade. And we finally said, like, can we just be resources for each other? And like, the text went out last week. Does anyone have a handyman? Like, I just need a handyman who can come in and help me on an install and finalize this art installation, And people were passing out their handymans. And so I think, yeah, we're just constantly asking people, do you know anybody good? Do you know anybody who's available? Do you know someone trustworthy? Someone in this price point? So that's how I've been doing it so far. So if you have any referrals, I'm happy to take them and I'm happy to share them.
I do think that's where Instagram can sometimes be an asset. I
That's
know
true.
that for me, I'm always watching what, in Australia we call them builders rather than general contractors, but I'm always watching, what builders are working on which projects, some of the leading architects in the area, which builders are they using, making sure that I'm following them, being active, and some of them follow me and just sort of reaching out and say, like, I really love this project that you did, and you can just sort of say, like, if you're ever, like kind of just starting to sort of build that discussion and that relationship, like you said, that networking piece.
Yeah.
And I did actually want to ask you about, and you sort of touched on it, which is beautiful. I love that text thread, but I feel like you, perhaps because of the blogging days, but that you really do foster community with other, like you say, you're in contact with other interior designers. How important is that to surround yourself with people who are on a similar journey to you?
I think it's really important. I think especially when you're starting out, to not be afraid to ask questions. And there are a bunch of workshops and different things you can go to. The Havenly girls, they hold one up in Sonoma or Carmel every year. I haven't gone to it yet. I've thought about going. I think that could be great, even if I don't end up like necessarily learning that much, even just being in those networking spaces, going to, I go to Fog Fair, go to places where there are other designers. I think it's great, even if we're just commiserating over drinks. Like venting about something obnoxious that happened, because obnoxious things happen and it's hard, whether it's from a client or from a contractor or from somebody. Like, just being in community with people to help get ideas and problem solve, I think is super important.
Yeah. Any other questions? Come on, I know someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you too, and especially, the ending piece of like beating to do it. That's pretty encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
Just thinking about, okay, so like the couch has been ordered, all the pieces, Jeannie has like sourced all this stuff, right? Are you, this kind of a nitty gritty question maybe, but are you sending the things over to the person's address, especially not having, right, like your burger? And then on the day of like, we're going to like set this all up, are you there? Do you have other people for that? Because I know you have, right, contractors that work at different places. And so when you're working around here in the Bay Area, like, are you there and setting this up yourself, or do you hire people?
Yeah, it depends on the client. So we do use a receiving house if the client wants that. It's an additional expense, but especially for big projects, it can be really useful. But then conversely, like our biggest renovation project right now, that's been 2.5 years in the making, that we're going to be finishing in February. We were lucky enough that the client had the property had like a little guest house, ADU on it. So we've been storing most of the stuff in the ADU. They've just been receiving everything there. And the clients there, they're not living in the house, obviously, but they're renting an Airbnb that's like 5 minutes away. And so we just text the client anytime a delivery is coming, and we're like, and the foreman on the job, and we're just like, something's coming. It's going to be there that day. Make sure you open it and inspect it. If there's any issues, text us a photo, because it's in Berkeley, so we're not going back and forth to Berkeley all the time. But yeah, we do all our own installs. I do love to style. I'm never not styling. That is one of my favorite things to do. So I think it would be impossible for me to ever give that up. I have to be on site to do the installs and do the styling. And then it's in our contract that we have rights to photograph every project. Definitely put that in your contract. We don't necessarily do it because not every project ends up being photo worthy. That's fine. Sometimes you just do them for the money. But we do have ones that we're definitely going to photograph, and so I like to go in and be able to do the installation, and then we try to shoot. We try to time the shoot to the install so that we're not inconveniencing the client
after they've already moved back in and are fully established. And also then, their life isn't everywhere yet. Like you still get to keep it in that really pristine. So if the timing can work, that's how we do it.
I did want to, I'll just intercept for a second. I did want to ask you about publication because, like you mentioned, you had your home featured in Domino magazine. You're looking to get some projects featured. What role has being published played for you in terms of getting your name out there? How important has it been? And how, I mean, I know that lots of people really struggle with this. They want to get published, but they don't know how to go about it. How have you gone about it?
Yeah, again, I think, I'm a little lucky in that I have a background in PR. So I feel very comfortable pitching my own projects. There are fantastic interior design focused PR specialists. If you need names and you ever want to hire someone, I can refer you to multiple. I know a lot of really, really good ones. And I do think it can be worth the money. I've seen some of my friends just careers explode because they hired the right PR person and they got a bunch of work published. You really have to think about what your objective is. Being in Domino magazine is a great calling card. I was in the print magazine. The print magazine doesn't even exist again now. They killed it again. But most people will say print magazines don't get you jobs. It's a calling card. It's cachet. Same, often, not everyone makes money writing books. I think you do a great job with your books, but some people also just do a book to have as a piece of legitimacy. But I do think being strategic about online publication is really smart because that gives people an immediate ability to go to your website, to go to your Instagram, to go to a place where they can contact you. So I think being really smart about that. And to your point about following people on Instagram, follow editors on Instagram. Pay attention to who writes for magazines. Like their stuff, comment on their stuff, DM them if you want. Like so much of getting published is relationships. PR is relationships. So that's actually where I spend a lot of my time on Instagram, is following people in the industry, both other designers, but also people in design media. If you're really trying to get published, that are really, and I've had editors reach out to me over DM and be like, if you ever have a project, please send it to me. Or, if we're working on a story, we want to know your top 5 white paint colors. Are you interested in participating? Like that, having those relationships makes you a go-to person for them. And that's been really good.
And it gives you credibility. You become known within the industry. It gives you that sort of like know and trust factor. So it's sort of when people are approaching you to work on one of your projects, or you're pitching to someone, that it's not like you're this invisible person, like, who are you? And what are you about? So it gives you that credibility, which is, I think, so important.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier too about photographers. Photography also really matters. And being really intentional about who you shoot with. It's a worthwhile, you can look in the magazines and the online stories and see who shot them. They tend to be shot by the same handful of people. And so being strategic about that and knowing whose work, who has relationships with publications, hire those photographers because it'll help you. They're not cheap, but if that's something that you're looking to do, you just be really intentional and strategic about every single one of those decisions.
Yeah, no, definitely. So did you have another question?
Yeah, task question, basically. Your model, do you charge a markup?
Yeah. We do. We didn't when we started. We did the whole we're going to pass along our trade discounts, and then realized you make no money doing this. So we do charge a markup now on everything. Yeah. We charge. There's a storage fee. We charge a markup on delivery. And it's really, and that's the other thing, is it's just really standard, and it's just part of the industry. And this is the other thing I've learned. I said it earlier. Interior design is a luxury business. It's a luxury to be able to have interior design. If someone's going to penny pinch you around your markup, they're not the right client, because that's going to be a miserable working experience. Does that eliminate the ability for some people to hire interior designers? Yeah. Is that fair? No. Is there ways that we need to try to right size that? 100%. But as your business, don't undercut the places where markup is just straight profit. That is where you're actually going to make money, because interior design takes so much time. You don't make the money on your time.
because I mean, I don't know about you, like I work all the time. Like every Saturday night, I have my glass of wine and I might be watching British Bake Off, but I'm also like sourcing on it. Like it's never not, I mean, Jeannie gets mad at me. She's really good about not doing that. I'm really bad about not doing that. My husband can attest. So recognize you should be getting, but I'm not billing for any of that time. But I'm going away on vacation next week, amazingly, for Thanksgiving. I'm going to try to shut my phone off, but I know I'm going to be thinking about client projects and assessing the hotel and being like, oh, maybe this light fixture or this texture. Like we're never not working. It's not a job or a business that you can shut off. So you've got to find the ways to get paid for it.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for being so open and sharing and honest. And I knew that Erin would be an amazing guest, and you have delivered. So I really appreciate
Now that this book gets them signed, I don't have the newest one, so I'm going to be buying a copy today and take her workshops. They are incredible. And please hold one in Sydney so we can all have an excuse to come to Australia.
I will do. But yeah, thank you again so much. Thank you, Natalie, for hosting us. Beautiful, beautiful shop. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have afterwards. But yeah, appreciate you coming. Thanks so much.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.